We're about to dive into this really powerful idea that honestly explains so much. Everything from those awkward silences in work meetings to, believe it or not, sudden political revolutions. It's called preference falsification, and it's all about the hidden truths we keep behind our public faces.
So let me ask you this. Have you ever found yourself just nodding along, maybe even clapping for something while on the inside you're just screaming, "This is a terrible idea"? If that sounds familiar, well, you've already had a front row seat to the powerful phenomenon we're going to break down.
And this quote, this really hits the nail on the head. This is our central puzzle. Why is there such a massive gap between what we say in public and what we actually think in private? And more importantly, what does that mean for all of us?
Okay, to really get this, let's start with a super simple analogy. Picture this. You're at a show and frankly, it was boring, just awful. But then it ends and the entire crowd just jumps to its feet, applauding like crazy. So what do? Come on, be honest. If you're like most of us, you probably stand up and clap along too. That one little decision, that's what this whole thing is about.
You see, this isn't just you being socially awkward. It's actually a predictable pattern of human behavior. And there's a real theory that gives it a name and explains exactly how and why it works.
So yeah, this theory, it's all about pulling back the curtain on that huge, sometimes crazy difference between our private thoughts and our public actions.
All right, so it was developed by an economist named Timur Kuran, and the theory basically says that we often misrepresent our own beliefs. And it's not necessarily because we're being dishonest, it's because we're making a kind of rational calculation. We weigh the benefit of saying what we really think against the social cost, and, well, a lot of the time, just going with the flow wins out.
And this breaks it down perfectly. On one side, you have your private preference. That's your genuine belief, what you actually think. Then on the other side, there's your public preference. That's the opinion you signal to the world. It's the applause you give because, the whole room expects it. That gap between the two, that right there is preference falsification.
So here's where it gets really interesting. What happens when it's not just you, but millions of people all hiding their private preferences at the exact same time? Well, you get this incredibly powerful and deeply misleading illusion of agreement.
And it really boils down to three main drivers. First up, plain old social pressure. Nobody wants to be the weird one out, right? Second, you've got material incentives. Your job, maybe even your safety, might depend on just saying the right thing. And third, there's what's called moral signaling. We all have this desire to be seen as a good person who holds the correct views.
And the result is this kind of bizarre world where everybody is whispering their true feelings in private, but shouting agreement in public. This creates this powerful illusion that dissent doesn't even exist. So you start to feel totally alone in your disagreement, which of course makes you even less likely to ever speak up. It's a feedback loop.
But, and this is the craziest part, these illusions are surprisingly fragile, and when they break, they can break in a truly spectacular way. This is something called a preference cascade.
This is the key question. What happens when that one person in the audience finally lowers their hands and stops clapping? What happens when just one person finally says what they're actually thinking? Well, it can trigger a chain reaction. First, maybe just one or two brave people express their true preference. Then, suddenly, other people see them and realize, wait, I'm not the only one. This lowers the risk for everyone else to speak out, so more people join in. And just like that, what seemed like a solid public consensus can completely flip on its head.
Let's go back to our theater analogy because it makes perfect sense here. One person stops clapping. Then their neighbor, who also hated the show, feels a little braver and stops too. Then the whole row. And in just a matter of seconds, that thunderous applause can die out, replaced by an awkward silence that was actually the true consensus all along.
Here's another great way to think about it. It's like water slowly heating up. Private opinions can be shifting and changing for years, totally under the surface, completely invisible to everyone. But once they hit a certain tipping point, that change just erupts into public view. All at once, it seems like it came out of nowhere.
Or, for an even more dramatic image, think of a giant dam. This is why authoritarian regimes or really dominant social norms can seem incredibly stable for decades, right up until the moment they completely collapse. The public loyalty was just an illusion. Once one tiny crack appears, the immense pressure of all that hidden private truth can bring the entire structure down.
Okay, so this isn't just some abstract theory. Once you have this lens, I promise you are going to start seeing preference falsification absolutely everywhere. In the workplace, it's everyone nodding along to the boss's new plan that they privately think is a complete disaster. In a classroom, it's that dead silence when the teacher asks, Any questions? Even though half the students are totally lost. And online? Oh man, it's the fear of getting piled on that stops people from questioning a popular opinion.
And on a bigger scale, this is why polls can be so spectacularly wrong. People often tell pollsters what they think is the socially acceptable answer, not what they actually believe. And it's why huge political movements and even revolutions can seem to just erupt overnight, catching all the experts by surprise. The change was happening privately for years.
And in our modern world, this whole effect is on steroids. Social media acts like a giant amplifier for all this social pressure. Our public preferences are now performed under these massive digital floodlights for the whole world to see, and the punishment for stepping out of line is faster and way more visible than ever before.
So this leaves us with a final, really fascinating question. When you look out at the world today, at all the things that it seems like everyone agrees on, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Which of those agreements are actually real, and which are just illusions, just waiting for a tiny crack in the dam? What hidden truths are sitting just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to boil over?